here that have come to share a lot about the international world and how that relates to us and what's coming into Colorado, and more so on summer season, and what we can expect and how we can maybe make things better in that world for us here in Snowmass. So I'll leave it to Andrea to start.
If I can, just before, so Snowmass has had record occupancy this summer. We had a record May, we had a record June, we had a record July, we had a record August. I believe we'll have a record September, and God knows about October. But anyway, so if you look at it from 2012 to all through the end of last year, our summer occupancy has gone up about 83%. And so what does that mean for us as a community, and what that means for us in terms of how we view summer, I think is we're shifting, and with all the excitement that's opening up across the street with Snowmass Space Village and the Lost Forest and the Limelight and more, I imagine that we're just on a stronger trajectory going forward. And I think we're all very well oiled machine when it comes to winter tour operators and winter bookings and working with the International Alliance. And so this is it's a different beast. These folks, and as you'll learn from this data, don't necessarily come and park it for 28 days like the Australians do and don't move. They function a little bit differently, and I think it's so great that you guys have taken the time out of your busy schedules to come and enlighten us with some of the data you have, and then tell us about all the great work that you all are doing and how we can fit in with that better. So thank you.
You're welcome. And this is what we do. So are they recording? Do we know? Do you need me at a mic, or can
I think it will record a little better if you are closer to the mic. Sorry, Andrea.
Okay. All right. Yeah, no, and unfortunately the other mics are giving a lot of feedback. Is this actually doing anything, or is it just
I don't
you're
think
hearing
so.
my voice anyway?
Try this
Part
one.
recording it.
Try this one.
I feel really goofy walking with that. All right.
The light's on for him.
So anyway, I'll try to hang back here. So as we go, I'm Andrea, again, for those of you whom I haven't met. As we go through, we do try to keep it very interactive. Just so you know, in preparation for time, we do have about 2 hours planned for you. Just FYI, there are certain sections that we can cruise through really, really fast if we need to. So send up a smoke signal if you're like, I don't care, we're done. So it's super interactive. Just let us know kind of as we go. So what we will cover today, I'm going to, even though we're the international team that's here, we're going to talk a little bit about the CTO and just the different things that the CTO is doing right now. Also, so you can kind of get to know some of the people and opportunities available through the CTO on the domestic side as well as the international. Of course, we're going to focus on international today, so we'll tell you a little bit about our team and what we're doing, and then we're going to go through a lot of data. So we're going to go through the tourism economics data, which is the data that tells us who is coming to the state and how much they're spending while they're here, which is stuff that we like to know. Then we're going to bring Chris up for a little bit. Trade is, and you'll get to hear it all, but trade is very important in the international markets, and Chris is going to make sure that you know how to work with a receptive operator to make sure your property is getting sold overseas. Then we're going to go into some destination analyst data, and this is the part that if we have to cruise through this really fast or skip it, we certainly can. Destination analyst is the data that tells us a little bit about the Colorado brand overseas, who knows about us, what they think about when they think of Colorado, what imagery works, and just what their intent is to come. So again, that stuff we can cruise through pretty fast. It's a lot of slides, but it does go very quickly. Then just how to get involved with the CTO, and most importantly, about fans and hosting fans, because that's one of the greatest return on your investment for very little money and a lot of coverage. So we shall begin. So the Colorado Tourism Office, for those of you who've been in this industry, probably know that it disappeared for a while. So it disappeared in 1993 and was reinstated again in the year 2000. So we ourselves as an office, you could call us relatively young. So we do have 11 board members, and then plus 4 that are appointed, they're legislators that are appointed by the governor every year. Our job is to work with our industry, just plain and simple. And we do have 4 committees that we work with. So tourism marketing is really kind of more the domestic, the ads, what's working, what's not. Destination development, you guys are a little past destination development. That's a little bit more for rural Colorado, who they want to get involved in tourism but don't really know where to start. So you guys are leaps and bounds above that right now. international promotion, and then there's also a leadership committee. Mar is actually a member of our international promotion. And then we have task forces that put together, so right now we're currently working on regional branding, which is actually complete and rolling out to our board on Wednesday, just FYI, for those of you who have participated in some of that. It's very exciting. You'll get to know what your name is. But really what the Colorado Tourism Office discovered a couple of years ago, what was that thing that we went around and did with all the input and the feedback sessions?
Your
But
whole
anyway,
roadshow.
Roadmaps.
Oh, it was a roadshow. Oh, it was for the roadmap. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad somebody else knows the tourism office better than I do. But we really discovered that the regions that were put together were kind of cobbled together, not very descriptive. Didn't say much about Colorado as a whole. They were literally northwest, southwest, central. We're like, okay, I think we can do a little bit better than that, and then possibly use it as we promote. And then visitor services also. So we're taking a really good look at our welcome centers right now, trying to figure out how we can make them better. And of course, we use our welcome centers as tourists stop into them to try to promote and get them to stay longer in Colorado and experience more things. So the CTO is very important to our tourism industry, of course. So in 2017, again, I know we're at the end of 2018, but our figures usually come roughly in the middle of every year for the previous year. So everything I talk about is going to be 2017 data today. But we had 84.7 million US visitors, so that tracks domestic only. We'll do international separately in just a little bit, which is also almost $21 billion in spending. I think that's pretty impressive. It generates about $1.28 billion in taxes, which is we keep hitting records every year, and a lot of it's thanks to you guys as well. It supports more than 171,000 jobs. What's really interesting about that number is Colorado is a state, we have 1.7% of the US population, yet we have 7.7% of the tourism jobs.
Say that one
So-
more time.
What's that?
One more time?
We have, so Colorado as a population is 1.7% of the population of the United States, yet 7.7% of all tourism jobs are found in Colorado. So that does show the impact of tourism to our state and our state economy. And we have a record high percentage of leisure travelers at 3.1%. So we do keep moving up those ranks. I hate to say it, we're never going to beat a Florida, California, any of those, but Colorado is very important. So we're going to apologize a little bit for this slide. Is this one not working? You want me to be louder? Sorry, and that will actually help my voice in the long run. Because, again, you're going to get to listen to me a lot today. So this is our tourism office team, although I feel like every time we put one of these out, it's already changed. And unfortunately, the last one they gave us cut off at the bottom, so there's a bunch of stuff missing. But very importantly, of course, we are an office of the governor. We report up through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And then Kathy reports to the director of OEDIT, as we call it, who reports to the governor. And then we really have the 4 different areas that we talked about before. Amber, for those of you who know Amber, is on maternity leave right now, has decided she's not coming back. Just FYI. So, see, our chart's already changed again. And then we have Destination Development, Director of Visitor Services, which is our welcome centers, and then there is the international team. Although on this chart, it kind of looks like Fishman reports to me. He does not. He reports to Kathy. Within our domestic U.S. marketing, of course, we also have all of our PR efforts, and down here kind of shows who all of our contractors are. Unfortunately, you cannot see from the slide. Oops, sorry, do I need to go back here too? For the ladies who are watching back here. So the rest of our team, of course, is filled in and we'll get to who the team is, but Bree is also on this chart, we're sorry. It's cut off, and the chart they gave us was like turned and in all these little pieces, and I tried to fix it, but I was spending way too much time doing that. So you guys are familiar with the Colorado Tourism Roadmap, which is what those MPET sessions were all about. Thank you, Virginia, since I could not remember that. And really, there's a lot of, the 4 pillars that we use came out of that, but the other thing that really came out of it, which was very important to us, was our vision and our mission, which we updated. So Colorado is the premier U.S. destination. You guys can read. I don't need to go through all that for you. But really, our mission is to drive spending in the state. This is what keeps us all employed. This is why we do what we do. So really quick on the domestic marketing, and I'm going to cruise through this because a lot of you who have seen a lot of this. Is it getting darker in here? Am I just going a little crazy?
Yeah.
So really our Come to Life campaign is to elevate the possibility that you're not just sightseeing. We want to make you feel something different. We want you to feel something or come to life when you're in Colorado. So our business objective course, increase economic impact, increase spending. Spending. That's what we want them to do when they are here. And again, we want you to feel truly alive when you come visit Colorado. We want it to be not just a vacation, but we really, truly want it to be an experience. We do have a top tourism website, and I believe that in fact, I've already talked to a few people who are on our website with enhanced listings, or of course, all of our DMO and CBB partners, do also belong to the website. We really increase traffic. We have over 10 million visitors. Where is it up there? Yeah, 10 million visitors. It's been really interesting in the days of Google search to try to keep your website relevant, because so much of what they're doing bypass your site. But luckily, we have a great website team that has made sure that we have all the right keywords and everything, that it does indeed still continue to drive. Oops. Too many microphones up here. I talk with my hands, sorry. So our website is still incredibly relevant. We hope that you do see the website driving traffic to your, very hotel sites, and especially to our destination sites. And we, in FY18, so our fiscal years run from July through June. So in the last year that just ended this last June, it did refer 4.3 million visitors to our industry partner sites. And we started a project to really track where our visitors are going once they get to our site and where they're going. Unfortunately, due to some reasons, that's on hold right now, but we're trying to find another provider who can do that for us. And our CTO PR efforts. Have any of you ever hosted a journalist from our domestic team? Yay, of course. So they're always doing the same thing on the domestic side that we are doing on the international side. One of the big differences you'll hear about is we are also very much supporting the trade element of our program, in addition to our journalists as they come. And of course, we are really strong on all of the social websites. Dave Flugie in our office, if you've ever dealt with him, he's a character, but he knows what he's doing when it comes to social media. So, really our main objectives are engagement, inspiration, and again, it's lead generation, web visits, getting people to Colorado, and getting them to spend money while they're here. Some of the numbers that go with that, reach on Facebook is over 90 million. Web clicks, views, engagements, you guys need to look at that. Instagram is, that's kind of an up-and-comer. So right now that's still 2.18. Estimated to reach about 50 million. Most engaging spot. Of course, this is always very popular when we're in Colorado Springs. And then Twitter, and then the hashtag. So I do know when we bring our international fams in here, one of the things we're always asking them to do is hashtag Colorado Live and hashtag the destination that we're in. So hopefully you see some traffic through that too. We do work with CrowdRiff, so this user-generated content is huge for us, especially on the photos. If you talk to a lot of people and what's working in inspiration guides, what's working in holiday guides, official visitors guides, the whole vista shots that are done by a professional are not what people are looking for right now. They're really looking for that. They want to feel like it's them. They want that user-generated content, so that's very important. Destination development, because you guys are a little beyond this. I'll go through it super duper quickly. But really, they're trying to come up with the creation of brand new traveler experiences in less visited areas of Colorado. It's a little focused on the rural, a lot on the Eastern Plains, some surprising mountain towns too. In fact, is Delta County going through one of the craft workshops right now? Yeah. So yeah, we're really trying to get some of these destinations that are very interesting, but we're trying to help them create product and really get them up and running as well. And there are also the marketing matching grants that I don't know, it's part of destination development. I don't know if any of you have applied for those in the past, but they are grants. We now have large grants and small grants. So the large grants is a one-on-one match of up to $25,000. So if you have a project that's $40,000 and you want to apply for $20,000 of that to come from the CTO, while you put in $20,000, you can do it. There's an application process. Of course, it has to be to drive, it has to be tourism related, which is pretty clear. If people, and I think the 25,000 number was always a little bit off-putting for people. It doesn't have to be a huge project like that. We now have the small grants too that I think are up to 5,000 or 10,000. But they're a 25% cash match. So if you have something, and there's also a technical assistance grant, so if it's your website you're trying to get up online, if it's anything tourism related. We upped some of these numbers, for example, after the floods in 2013 to try to get, okay, I'm moving this guy, sorry. I am gonna knock him over eventually. To try to get some of these up and running, again, it's about economic development. So we want to get people's tourism industry up and running to bring jobs, bring economic development to each and every destination in Colorado.
Andrea, I have a question on that.
Sure.
It used to be that the cash grants had to be multi-jurisdictional. I think ACRA and Snowmass Tourism in the past have applied. Is that still the case, or could it be Snowmass Tourism by itself applies?
Snowmass Tourism by themselves, as far as I understand, can apply. Yep.
Used to have to be 3 jurisdictions, I think.
Yeah, it used to have to be 3. And
Yeah.
Okay.
try to
I can double check on that because
Okay,
it isn't
okay.
something I deal with every day, but I did think that doesn't necessarily need to be a regional component to it.
Cool.
Sometimes if it's a big enough project, people want to pool their money, so sometimes
right,
that has happened that way. But I will follow up with that. All right, so let's talk about the areas I actually know something about. So the international team. This is who we are. That was a strange transition. I wasn't expecting that. So this is Bree, right over here, this lovely lady, who's in the upper right. So she's our FAM manager. She coordinates all of our international FAMs that are coming in. 19, I think, this fall, which is a pretty number. She also does all of our work, and she coordinates our booths, plural, at IPW. So if any of you have heard of the IPW trade show, been to the IPW trade show, whether in our booth or in your own booth, like I said, I'm looking at a couple of you over here. Yeah. She does that. That's all her. So then also in our team, we have an international coordinator. This is Julie Defoe. And we basically break our 2 market managers, Liz and Jennifer, if you've ever met them, up by the markets that they handle. So these markets, with the exception of Mexico, in which we don't have a full-time rep, these 7 markets represent where we do have representation. For those of you who are not as familiar with the international program, how I always like to explain it is to say the Colorado Tourism Office International Program is like a small version of our domestic marketing. We take everything that is done on the domestic side, we take our advertising, we take our press releases, we take all of that and we send it to a representation company who looks to the consumer. They look like the face of Colorado. We send it to them, and then they create what makes sense within their own country. Every country is a little bit different as far as what resonates, what works, but they represent us in 3 different ways. They do the trade, they do the PR, and they do the consumer. Those representation companies are Colorado in those markets. And they're doing just a little bit of everything that the CTO is doing here. We just push it out overseas. Of course, the press releases they change them up. They, put their own spin on them, depending on the language, et cetera, et cetera. So Liz Birdsall manages our Canadian rep, which is Annika Klint with Clinton Associates, and that is largely a PR relationship at this point. Every market we look at, we do a little bit differently too, because Canada acts a little bit like the US, in which a lot of people are booking online now. There's some trade, but it's just not as large. So we figured that wasn't where we wanted to put our effort. Again, as we kind of get to this end of this presentation, we'll show you some interesting and somewhat scary things about who even knows who Colorado is, and we wanted to put a little more push into the consumer side there. In the Asia Pacific, we have a project-based representative in Japan. So they aren't full-time, although they do answer inquiries, but as we have projects come up, they represent us for those. China, we have East West Marketing, which is a full-time rep, and as of last April, we also do have a representative in Australia now, which is APTMS, or Asia Pacific Travel Marketing Services. Jen Bartlett manages our European reps. And again, if you kind of look at these across the board for those of you who have been dealing with us for a while, we have a very experienced rep in Canada, and Europe have all been our representatives for a long time. This Asia Pacific market is changing, for all of its own different reasons. So we had never had representation in Australia. So that's new. Japan, our rep retired, so that's kind of changed. China, of course, is the up-and-comer that everybody's talking about these days. So let's talk about our travelers. who they are and why we make the decisions we make, I guess would be the best way to put it. So it's been a little bit interesting watching this data. So as I was coming into the tourism office, the CTO had just purchased 2015 data. We had never seen overall aggregate tourism data for the state of Colorado before that. We used to heavily rely on flight data for a lot of this information. But flight data, if you look at how some of the international travelers travel, wasn't necessarily giving you the full picture. So they might stop on the West Coast and either do a fly drive and drive into Colorado. They might take an entirely separate flight that they booked within the United States, and you're not going to track them that way. So this was really the first time. So Tourism Economics is a company that does this analysis, and they do everything in the aggregate. So you can see the sources they use down here. So everything from APIS, which is flight check-in, to NTO, which is the U.S. Commercial Service. Again, that data they've had some issues with that over the last couple of years, which, if I were to guess, that's why I think we saw the dip in 16, which didn't actually happen. Because if you look at a fairly steady climb, that is kind of the outlier, and that was right about the time the NTTO was not getting the proper data. So I still blame it on the NTTO. I think we were fine in 16. StatCan, VisaView. So VisaView tracks credit card spending. StatCan is actually the Canadian data. So all sorts of different things for this. So we increase, so year over year, we increased 5.4%. What we do also like to do is benchmark ourselves against the US. So sure, it's great if Colorado increases 5.4%, but what if everybody else increased 7%? Then that means we're actually on the losing side of it. So we're always really happy when we see, for you guys, sorry. We see certain things like the US increasing only 1.8%, while Colorado increases even further. And then we do also split our data into international and overseas. So international includes Canada and Mexico, and overseas is everything else. Sorry.
Oh, so this is on the left, that's all.
This is all.
All outside of the US?
Yep.
Okay.
And then this is the overseas visitor, which had an even larger increase, which is exactly what we like to see. And you'll see why in a minute, because they spend a lot more money. So these are our top 15 markets from top to bottom. So Mexico and Canada are sort of the naturals, largely just due to proximity. Followed by the United Kingdom. Sorry, I don't know why the kingdom isn't in there. Followed by the United Kingdom, which has pretty much always been our largest overseas market and probably will always continue to be. And Australia, which is, until we got that 2015 data in 2016, we had no idea that Australia was our second largest overseas market. So the fun things you learn as you go. Followed by Germany and France. It's been very interesting over the past few years to kind of follow this progression of China. So this used to read France, Brazil, Japan, then China. In fact, originally I think China was somewhere down here. China's slowly starting to leapfrog its way through our visitation. A couple of other markets that people talk to us about a lot are India and South Korea, just because those are growing markets. Again, still not quite hitting our radar screen in a way that we're approaching them in any way, but we do like to keep an eye on them. And to break it down by market, to compare ourselves to the US, generally with one exception that I'll let you find, we are a little ahead of the game. Unfortunately, that exception here is Brazil. Mexico, you can kind of see as a whole for reasons that shall not be named. Mexican visitation was down to the US pretty heavily in 2017. Luckily down to Colorado, but not as heavily down, which is good since they are our number one market. Canada, for the first time, is kind of doing a spring back. As the US dollar has been really strong, it's always funny to watch these markets too. So when you look at Canada, their visitation goes exactly the percentage that their dollar is against our dollar. So if their dollar is 10% weaker, their visitation goes down 10%. The Mexican is the opposite. As soon as the US dollar gets a little stronger and the peso goes down, Mexican visitation goes up. Can't explain it, don't understand it, but that's just kind of how it works, which is always very interesting as we look at this.
Andrea, is this calendar year 2017?
It is calendar year. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it is not on our fiscal year. Thank goodness. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see for the most part, we're really, really outpacing the rest of the country, and that's what we like to see. Oh, I'm sorry, with the exception of India as well. Growth in top markets, and this is actually looking over the last 5 years for which we have data. 2017, I could put the data together myself and take a look at the beginning. It's always very interesting if you take that look. You can see some of our big growers really have been Mexico. I think, they do have a stronger middle class than they used to. China, obviously, which is what everybody's talking about. South Korea and India. So a lot of the developing countries are really, pretty clearly up and comers. But if you look at it in pure numbers, suddenly maybe not as interesting. Just, if you're looking at India with their 12,000, well, 50, okay, so 6,000 is great, but, not setting the world on fire. The visitation from Mexico is really a number that I think is a big focus just because that market is bigger, so that just means greater numbers. But yeah, pretty much everybody's increasing except Brazil. Brazil's been on the decline for the last few years, and that's largely because of their own economic problems. All right, this is one of my favorite graphs. So if you start from the top over here, that's the order in which you have these markets at the bottom. So start from here and work your way over. As you can see, the UK, far and away our top market, is projected to be our top market for a very long time, followed by Australia. Again, our little surprise second front runner there. If you kind of look in this middle part, you'll see a lot of the European markets in Japan, which are very important to us, all around the increase. But they're just a little bit flatter, not necessarily the big growers of some of these others. This little yellow line is the one that we always do like to point out because that is China. Their market first opened for tourism in 2007 to allow people to the US. And you can see it just continues to climb as their economy gets better and as their travelers are actually changing and they're getting a lot more savvy. And they're, I think people talk about Chinese visitation and people get scared because they picture really cheap motor coaches with 8 people in a room and, crappy motor coach. And that's not what we're seeing anymore. Especially in Colorado, we see primarily the FIT. They're becoming very independent. They're a younger crowd. That's who we're seeing in the state. And that's the only people we're marketing to, too. We're not interested in cheap motor coach business. And so by region, and again, start with Asia, start at 12 o'clock and work your way clockwise. So this just really kind of shows you the different areas of the country, or of the world, and who's coming. So it starts with Asia with the 13%. Canada is about 20%. Europe is about 31% of our visitation. The other big red over there is Mexico. In between is Latin America, which is still a very small percent of our overall visitation. Middle East and Africa, and then Oceania, which is, since I doubt Fiji is coming here much, I'm going to say that's mostly Australia and New Zealand. And I'll let you read the increases just a little bit. And, of course, our important numbers are spend. So this time, we like to keep you on your toes. So this time, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up by the order. So United Kingdom is far and away, they have always been our largest spenders. So if you look at the numbers that we have coming from the United Kingdom and you look at the numbers we have coming from Mexico, the UK still outspends Mexico, just to give you an idea of why these overseas visitors are so important to us. All of them, luckily, really are growing chunks of money. I was going to say the red, I believe, is Mexico. So that's getting better and better. And then you see the little China green chunk up here, which just keeps increasing as well. Do you guys have any questions? I'm doing a lot of talking.
This looks opposite to me. This looks like the UK is the lowest.
I was thinking the same
That's
thing.
what I'm saying. Yeah, so from here, you work your way up. So start at the bottom and work your way up. Does that make sense? So United Kingdom, bottom. Germany, blue.
Yep.
France,
But-
yep.
But dollar-wise, it shows it's spending the least amount.
No, it's,
Oh, I
yeah.
see, okay.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is overall what the tourists are spending, and this is their chunk of
Okay.
it. Yeah.
That chunk is what you're looking at.
Yes,
The size of
yeah.
the bar.
France is
Yep.
that small gray bar, just the
Mhm.
small gray bar, not the blue bar, but the purple bar
Yep,
and the
yep.
gray bar.
Got it, okay.
I'm sorry. That's an excellent question, because we look at these all the time, so we think they make sense in our brain. Yeah.
I do say, 'cause I was like, I am not
Yep.
getting that.
Yep. Do you understand?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Good? Everybody? Okay.
Good.
All right. And again, this is why I love international travelers. So to put it in perspective, so our international overall impact was 1.744 billion in 2017. That is what our international tourists, and all of them, not just our top countries, but all of them spent while they were here. which we like. You know, if you consider an overall 20 billion for all of the domestic traffic and how much more that is, you can see how much more the internationals are outspending what the domestics are. These are the numbers we love when we look at it. So if you look at our total, they're spending about $1,763 per person per trip.
Are we able to get these
Yeah.
slides?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that is really what these 989,000 people are spending while they're here. It is per trip. It does not include flights. So it is what they are spending while they are in the state of Colorado itself. To put this in a little bit of perspective, your average domestic traveler spends about $500 when they are here. Our highest value outside of the international, our highest value ski or traveler is ski outside of that, which spends about $1,300 while they're in state domestically. So,
Your number of domestic travelers on average $500, does that include in-state tourists? Like if I went to Vail or Denver, is that included in that $500? Or is that $500 people from out of Colorado coming to Colorado?
they always pull it for the amount of time, so it is per trip while they are in the state of Colorado. So for us, destination, when we're looking at the spend numbers, doesn't matter. So if one person, and say it's an international, go from Denver to Snowmass to Grand Junction.
But does it,
Yep.
I guess my question is, does it include in-state, so if I go to Denver, am I in that $500 of domestic travel?
Oh, you personally.
Yeah, if somebody, well.
Yeah,
anyone
Yeah.
any
of the
in-
domestic
in-state-
traveler, I believe so, yeah.
in-state, okay.
Yeah, and some of our newest data tells us that in the state of Colorado, about 43% of our hotel nights are actually booked by Colorado residents.
Yeah, which is
So,
but you'd
it's
imagine
huge.
that the spend would be less.
Yep.
If we're all going to Denver on a business trip. Or
Yep.
Maybe we bring the average down.
Hmm?
Maybe we bring the average down.
That's what I'm,
Yeah.
As I'm curious too.
it's
Yeah,
just curiosity.
which could very well be. But
Yeah.
then you have a lot of us front range dwellers who go spend a
Go
week in the
there, yeah.
mountains. Yeah, and we spend and
Sure,
book
sure,
hotels and eat and do activities. So, yeah. So then again, this is why we love our overseas visitors. We love this little $2,400 number. Again, they stay longer, they spend more,
Do you have
they
that-
shop.
Is that coming up, the average length of stay?
We do not have average length of stay from tourism economics. We have it from other sources, so you won't see it in this set of data. And again, Canada and Mexico on sheer numbers are important to us, but they are just simply not spending as much while they're here. For Canada, some of the data that we see later, if we have time to get to it, it will tell you that our Canadians spend the most time in the state of Colorado itself when they come here. A lot of our overseas visitors are visiting a lot of neighboring states as well. So, buy market, just because it's a little bit of fun. I will just let you read it for a second.
And this is the whole state.
This is the whole state of Colorado, yep. Yeah, the tourism economics data doesn't let us define by areas, although they do have some new data sets that we might be able to do some more regional stuff with them, so we are looking at that. Yep. Yeah, so that's a little bit of fun. So seasonality is also something that we like to talk about to see when people are here. So these are overall, this is all international. I think people are always a little surprised to see. In fact, we've used numbers as high as 75%, which is not the case. As you can see here, it's more like 28, but really our visitors are coming all year round, and we do have a peak in the summer. With the exception of South America, which is always a little bit of fun. So you can see here, Argentina is the highest as far as when they visit in the winter months. Of course, a lot of this Q4 stuff you can also attribute, and I would say especially Mexico, the second homeowners are coming here over the holidays, so I would say they're not here in October and November. You're literally capturing most of those last 2 weeks of December right there. Brazil, sort of the same pattern, but not necessarily the Brazilianaires don't necessarily have all of the second homes that some of the others do. So yeah, you can see South America, and you'll see it a lot as we get into some of the data, who knows us. South Americans know us pretty well, and we can thank our ski industry for that. Oceania, Asia. Australia, you see a similar pattern, but you still see a lot of visitation in other months. And then some of our newer markets, stronger in all seasons. And most interesting is Europe. Europe really are summer visitors. But all of them are coming all year round is really the message that we like to give to this. And summer is becoming increasingly important.
Do you feel that on the Q4 for these, it's really, I don't feel like that's the Christmas week. I feel like that's probably Q4.
Yeah, for Europe, and again, they do their best to parse the data into what is just leisure, but you're going to see a little bit of business spend in this too. So, yeah, that's going to keep it up. But, I will say, in fact, if I look at Germany, where's Germany here? Germany, they love our fall time. And they love traveling off peak. As does France.
Are they coming in the summer?
Canada is actually probably our most even market. They're almost, but not quite, like 25% across the board. Yep. But they do have a higher peak. I want to say they're 30% in summer, and the rest of it fluctuates. They're not here as much in the spring. So Q2 is pretty low for them. Yeah, sorry, I didn't put them in here, but yeah. All right, one slide away from Chris. This is what we like to do to daze and confuse. So can anybody explain this to me? So in international trade promotion, travel trade is really what we spend about 75% of our time doing. It is very important, and you're going to hear a lot more of that from Chris, so I won't go into it too much. But getting your product in with the tour operators is the only way you're going to get sold in the international market. Travel trade still plays a hugely important role in the inspiration phase of getting people to come. That's where they go to talk to people so they understand their trip. That's where they go to book. It's very important for your property to be represented with the travel trade. So we are doing a bunch of trade shows where we are meeting with the travel trade, and we're making sure that there are itineraries to Colorado. And then a lot of the people who attend these trade shows with us are making sure that those itineraries are coming to their destination. Incredibly important. As we always tell people, kind of the starter trade show, but really the best way for hotels or destinations to get involved is to go West, where you can meet with the tour operators in one-on-one. I think they're 12-minute meetings. Tell them what you have. A lot of business can be done at those trade shows, just as far as setting up contracts and doing things. We do also, so we have the fam trips. Again, Bree will cover that, so I won't go into it too much. Co-ops are really consumer advertising that we do through tour operators, primarily in Europe, but we're just starting in Australia with some of these as well. Another interesting thing about Australia, for you guys to know, is we just did a big ski campaign there. We took a good chunk of their budget and we ran a ski campaign. We did that largely for these PR reasons, because our ski industry had been so heavily involved in Australia for years and had gotten so much coverage, the publications actually didn't want to cover them anymore because they were never buying advertising. So we're coming in, we're buying advertising so that we can continue to get that ski coverage.
I know how important tour operators are. Has there been a change over time? I've probably been involved in the international market longer than anybody because I'm older. But anyway, is there a decrease in the percent that's booking through tour operators or travel trade?
Right now, we see, and it does heavily depend on the country, right? So I'm going to say, if you've been in this longer than any of us, online travel agencies didn't exist then. So I would say, yes, there's probably been a lot of change. So where that might have been 80% of your bookings, it is now still a steady, I would say, between 30 and 40% of all bookings, just depending on the market. Some markets, like Germany, France, are heavier on the tour operator side. You see the UK doing a little bit more of the online stuff. Again, Canada, we kind of...
More like the US.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like the US and how they book too. So it just heavily depends. The other thing that people forget and why the travel trade is so important is even if people end up booking themselves online, they're still going into that travel agency to pick up that brochure to get their ideas for their trip. So travel trade still weighs heavily on the inspiration side, because if you're not in those catalogs, you don't exist. It's pretty much that simple. Questions about that? So the international PR efforts, again, these are what our reps are doing. They're doing press meeting, desk sides, everything that our domestic team does, except they're doing it internationally. They're doing press releases, social media feeds, fam trips. and just general education of the media about Colorado. And then on the consumer side, they respond to inquiries from customers via our websites, the holiday guides. I'm going to talk about Brand USA in a little bit, or I think I may have them next. The Colorado.com, if you now click on the language pages, go into the Brand USA websites. So we're actually using Brand USA kind of as our white label site. We have it now in 13 different languages, and people can go through and get all the information about Colorado. I say that as a little push for the 2 destinations in the room, because I know you have a page, refresh it, because this is now where all of our traffic is going, and we're paying to push traffic there too. And some of the consumer side. So this is Brand USA, which again, there's the opportunity to buy advertising, blah, 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 but I know Mitch was just in the state and has already hit you up, so I will leave you be for now. All right, I'm getting tired of talking. It's Chris's turn.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Pilley with Rocky Mountain Holiday Tours. So we are a receptive tour operator, also known as a international inbound tour operator, and I'm based in Fort Collins. How many of the hotels here already work with receptive tour operators? Okay. Down is up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is still your slide, Andrea, but
Oh, you can explain that.
so
Sorry,
the
that's a
difference-
surprise slide from our normal presentation when we don't have Chris.
And this kind of touches on working on or booking through OTAs, what the difference between selling to international travelers versus domestic. The international tend to still go through all the traditional channels of a travel agent, a tour operator. And so the ski, you will see more change away from the tour operator. They're doing a lot more online. But how they're traveling in the summer, the international are coming here and they're hitting 15 destinations in 2 weeks. I mean, they're just go, go, go. And they're spending 2 to 4 weeks here, and really they only know the major areas. So they know, I've heard of Denver, many of them don't even know Rocky Mountain National Park. They know Arches, Canyonlands. So they're still booking through the traditional channels of a tour operator because they have to piece together a very long road trip. So as a receptive tour operator, we're a wholesaler that contracts with both sides. So we're contracting with the international tour operators, offering them product, but also the local suppliers, everything from the accommodations, resorts, ranches, activities, museums, attractions, guide services, transportation. So one of our big roles is to know the tour operators in the markets and know what their clients are looking for. I work with about 250 different tour operators across Europe and Australia. And some of them won't touch anything that's not a 5-star resort. And then I know some of them that won't touch anything above a 2-star budget property. So we really have to know who we're working with and what their clients are looking for, because when we go over and do sales missions, we have to make sure we're targeting what they're looking for. And so we're specialists in the region. So I only do the Western U.S. We have about 15 states. The Western U.S., big focus on national parks. But there's companies that do just the East Coast. There's ones that do just California, just the South. And most tour operators work with a handful of receptive tour operators because they want to cover the world, but they don't want to contract the world. So by working with a company like ours, they can have half the U.S. covered and not have to contract with each individual hotel. And so like I said, we do a lot of overseas training. So we do overseas sales missions to the office, and we'll talk to the product people, we'll talk to the entire staff, and then we go to WTM, ITB, TTG in Italy, a lot of the larger overseas trade shows. And so we're always there representing the product that we carry. And usually we're trying to push new product or something. You know, I try to avoid mentioning Yellowstone. We're one of 4 companies that contract inside Yellowstone, and that is usually sold out by the end of January. So I don't want to talk about that when I'm overseas. So I'm always trying to give them new ideas and say, hey, instead of going here, here's a new place that has new hotels on board. They've got this activity provider. So you can stay at this hotel and go out with Blazing Adventures and spend a full day biking or doing a Jeep tour. So the channel of distribution, it's for your product to get to the end consumer, there's usually a lot of people involved, and not always. So you can kind of see with the arrow how it flows. And actually, I should probably put the hotel on the very start of the arrow. But so by contracting with a hotel, we'll then sell it to a tour operator, who then either sells it directly to a client, or they work with small independent travel agents. And some of them do both. They'll have a retail office, but they also sell to a big network of independent in-home travel agents. And then that's how the product gets to the end consumer. And then there's the OTAs that will contract directly and then sell to the consumer. But even a lot of the OTAs, like Expedia, has a wholesale side, which is interesting because then the tour operator is buying from someone who's offering their product as their biggest competition. But so that's generally how it works. Like I said, most tour operators are selling the world. So they're not going to contract directly unless they are doing hundreds of thousands of dollars in bookings. So they're going to book through us or another company like ours. But feel free to ask any questions you guys have along the way.
Where does Pegasus fit in?
So Pegasus is, if I'm thinking the same thing, Pegasus is a software company. And they work with Best Western and some of the major chains. And they are basically a bridge. So I'm actually going through that right now. It's a terrible process of getting connected directly to Best Western. So to get to Best Western, they're connected to Pegasus. Pegasus goes through Disco. Disco goes through MainTrack. And then it goes into our system, which is TourPlan, based out of New Zealand. So it's all these bridges that they have. It's all these IT companies that have built bridges to connect software companies. So.
So we work with a couple of different receptive tour operators, and my biggest pet peeve, and I know other hotels experience this too, is when there are these obscure OTAs that somehow access our inventory and rates through the receptive tour operator, and they're selling direct to consumer. How are you fighting that, and what should I be doing? Because I try and say 3 strikes and you're up, and we're gonna stop working with you, but I know you guys are the middleman. So
Yeah. So we don't actually run into that we don't run into that really at all because we're a smaller company. But a lot of the bigger companies it kind of goes into the Pegasus, where a lot of the big companies, let's take Bonnetell for example, they are connected to just about every software company. So then a tour operator in some random country, if they're working through a company like Pegasus, they can have live inventory to Bonnetels. And so that's usually where the issue is, because they're receptive, but at the same time kind of a big bed bank, and they're just trying to push rooms. There's no monitoring, they're not doing a full itinerary, they're just trying to sell a room.
right, they're selling directly to consumer, and that screws up our clarity.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how you would deal with that, because we don't deal with it. We're working directly with all of our tour operators, and we can see every booking. There's only 10 in our office, and we do about 50,000 room nights compared to the Expedia's wholesale side, the Bonnetels, the ATIs, some of those they do that in a year in Las Vegas. So I know that we've worked with hotels that have had that issue. I've gotten a lot of additional allotment because of issues because of that. People are cutting off. Cutting off tour operators. I just got a notice from Altera that if any of the bookings are at all tied to, it's like 6 companies that were cut off. And so we disclose where all of our bookings are coming from, which tour operators. But I know it's not always as transparent. So I mean, I would see if you can trace that booking back, or if you can try to mimic it. Yeah. Because that is an issue that we've seen a lot, where people are selling, they're trying to sell at cost, no markup, just to steal all the bookings, and next year everyone knows them for that destination, and they go back and raise their price up. And yeah, the rate parity has been a huge issue with receptive tour operators.
Situation where that's considered like illegal? I mean, they're not supposed to do that, are they?
No, they're not supposed to. Most of the contracts will specifically say you have to have this markup. It has to be part of a package. It just depends on each supplier's hotel or contract as to what their requirements are. Most ski destinations say you can't offer just the hotel. It has to be lift tickets. It has to be a whole full package. And yeah, it's just kind of a nightmare right now because the hotels don't want to be undercut. The idea is that going through these channels, you're offering a lower rate, because by the time it gets back to the consumer, it's the same prices you would see online. So you're not trying to, you don't want to be undercut. But it's definitely happening across the board.
So moral of story, work with Rocky Mountain Holiday Tours?
Yeah, that's the moral of the story, is to work with us. But no, there's lots of companies like ours. We do focus on the European market, so I would not be able to help with the South American market, the Mexican markets, some of those. So I think it's best to work with a handful, and for hotels that are looking to completely fill all their inventory, unless you're in a major national park, I'm not going to be able to do that. I do a few room nights, handful of room nights a week, and we just kind of give most of our hotels a base. And like I said, unless it's a major destination.
Are you going to talk about the timing of how all this works?
Yeah. Yep. So one of my biggest goals is, or one of my biggest roles is to negotiate net non-commissionable contracts. And I should go back. What I'm talking about is pretty much all FIT. Foreign independent traveler, foreign individual traveler, whichever you want to say. But it's all couples and families that have rented a car. They're going for 2 to 4 weeks along this long road trip. And so that's mostly what I book. We do 40 or 50 groups a year, but that's minimal to the FIT. So we're always, every year we have to get new contracts. And one of the things that most hotels believe is that they have to give an allotment, which is not the case. At least for us. For smaller, more specialized companies, that's not the case. The Expedias, some of those big companies will say, we're not going to even offer you unless we can have this allotment and guarantee that. But we work on allotment, pre-sale, or just on a request basis, where we're emailing saying, hey, we have a request for these days, is it available? And a lot of companies work that way. And that's another thing with the OTAs. A lot of the tour operators have become a lot more specialized than they used to be. They're trying to add in activities. They're trying to add in restaurants and things like that to bring the business back to them, instead of people just going on and booking online. They're giving a full package, and their clients are getting more out of the booking. And being a specialist in the area, we have to make operational itineraries for our clients, so we're always putting out new itineraries, giving them new ideas, because a lot of them don't know this region. So if they put an itinerary together, it's going to be it could be pretty ugly. Like, oh yeah, it's not that far. It's like, no, you're going 6 hours through the mountains for 2 days in a row. You don't want to do that. Or I've had people send me itineraries to approve, and they're using Cheyenne Mountain Resort in Colorado Springs as a hotel in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which doesn't work very well for the clients. So we're the ones that accept the bookings from the tour operators, and then we place it with the hotels. So as a hotelier, you're only dealing with one company. All the requests look the same. You're getting paid by one person. It's just a little bit easier than getting requests from multiple different companies. We are, as you mentioned, kind of the middleman in this whole process. And when the travelers are over here, we act as their emergency contact. So because there's an 8-hour difference to Europe, so when they're over here, if there's an issue checking in or their car breaks down, they can't make it to a tour, we're the ones that act on their behalf. Or there's always numerous things. We're one of 5 companies that have allotment in Yosemite, which is great until a fire closes Yosemite for 3 weeks, which happened in the end of July, first 2 weeks of August, peak season. So we were working with travelers to find them alternatives, to reroute them, give them different ideas, working with tour operators to make sure they enjoyed their trip. Or a couple years ago, our government decided to close. All national parks closed. And so we had to figure out what to do for our clients. So a true receptive tour operator is going to be a true wholesaler. They're never going to sell to the end user. Everything we do is B2B. Because the idea, like I said, the idea behind our rate structure is that there are 2 to 3 levels of markup before it gets to the end consumer. So that way we're on par with your retail rate, not undercutting you, not overcharging the clients. And so our clients are the international tour operators, and companies can have anywhere from 50 to 250, or some of them are much, much larger. But at that point, they generally become more of a bed bank or something like that. So receptive tour operators generally work on a very low markup. Ours is usually 8. Ranches, we do even less. And the idea behind that is if we're getting 20 or 25% off of the retail rate, but we want to do a lower markup because all the tour operators overseas are doing at least 15%. Because they have to go to consumer shows, they have to send out printed materials, they have to have a nice office for everyone to come into, and it has to be appealing. So they have a lot more overhead costs than we do. So we're trying to allow them to make what they need and still be profitable, because otherwise the whole model doesn't work. So we offer a one-stop shopping scenario for the tour operators. They can come to us, book 3 weeks of hotels for their clients. They can put in a ranch, they can put in activities. If it's a group, we'll do meals, we'll do the transportation. So we're packaging everything for their clients. And for winter, we're working with, what they change their name to? Working with like Colorado Mountain Express, Home James, doing their transportation to the mountains, getting all of their lessons, their lift tickets, everything as a package. So they don't have to go here and book that, here and book that. I already covered that bullet point. Both of those. We'll skip those. So why work with the receptive tour operators? So really expands your marketing efforts, and it does it very efficiently, because if you work with one company, so there's a long math problem here. If you're working with one company that has 40 tour operators, and those tour operators sell to independent travel agents, and they're selling to 100 little agencies, and each agency has 5 agents, and that agent has 10 clients that they work with on a yearly basis, you're getting out there to 200,000 potential travelers. Now, I wish I could say they'd all book. That would be, in a perfect world, great. But at least it's getting out there, and you have the opportunity to be in front of these overseas travelers. and to draw them to your region. And then, so while I say we are kind of the marketing arm, we market on your behalf, because we're going overseas and talking about all of our new product. So we sit down with the entire reservation staff, and some of the offices I sit down with, I have 40 people, and I'm talking to them about alternatives, or if you're flying into Denver, your main goal is to get to Arches Canyonlands. What do you do in between? So we're trying to answer questions that they see frequently, give them alternatives, say, okay, this destination is normally sold out, or it's getting to be too touristy. What's a good second option instead? So we do that, but there's nothing better than if you go and do some of your own. Some of the smaller shows that cater to international, hosting the FAMs, because that is very, very important to build those relationships and to meet the tour operators in person, because if they know you versus they know a hotel in Glenwood Springs, but they've met with you a handful of times, they're going to say, okay, I know so-and-so. I'm going to go to her hotel instead of going to this other hotel. This industry relies heavily on relationships. So one thing I say is, as we act as your marketing expense, so you're not paying anything for it. You should never pay for a receptive tour operator to carry your product. If a tour operator comes to you directly overseas, they may say, hey, I'll put you in the brochure and it's going to cost X amount. That's fairly common, but a receptive tour operator should never be charging you to offer your product. Their goal is to have as much product as possible to offer to their clients, and then they make money off each sale. And so you shouldn't be paying anything, and if you're not getting any bookings, then you didn't lose any money, just the 10 minutes it took to fill out a contract. And as I said, we're a pretty small company, so a lot of times we're only doing 2, 3, 4, 5 room allotment, or just a couple rooms a night at most hotels. So it just kind of helps fill the occupancy. So if a hotel is saying, hey, I'm always at 92%, I don't need anyone else to work with, I say, well, I can give you 2 rooms a night, and that will bump you up. So it just kind of helps fill that last bit of the occupancy. Good thing of working with receptive tour operators, they're based in the US, so they speak English, and they're located in a nearby time zone, so you're not trying to deal with an 8-hour time difference, or Australia for us, they don't get into the office until about 1 in the afternoon, I think. So if there's an issue, you have someone you can talk to right away, and someone that speaks English, which in most European markets you don't have an issue. A lot of the Asian markets, they don't speak English as well. In the European market, I would say Italy is the one that struggles the most with speaking English, but, well, that and the UK.
Check if you're listening.
And so we make invoicing and payment simple. It's all coming to one company. We're making payments in US dollars. It's wire transfer, it's check, however, credit card, there's no, and how we work is we send out checks for about a 2-week period. So every booking in that period is getting paid for. So you're not getting a credit card charge here, or a wire charge here, and a check here, and each for one booking. Could be 30 room nights on one check. So we try to make it as easy as possible. So the pricing structure, as I mentioned, we're usually looking for a much more discounted rate off of the retail rates. So what I'm looking for is a net non-commissionable rate, and it's usually 20 to 30% off of the retail rate. And the reason is because I'm adding my markup, the tour operator's adding theirs, and then the travel agent adds theirs. So the idea is to get back to retail. As I said, some tour operators will work directly with hoteliers and ranches if they're booking enough, and they usually will be looking for about 15 to 20% off the retail rate because they're not selling to as many people. And most travel agents won't reach out directly unless it's a very high item booking. Then they may try to book direct, but their typical commission is 10%. So this is kind of the tough part, the tricky part that we struggle with every year. So when we need rates. So we send our contracts out generally in April. So we send them out in April because we want to have them out before IPW so that people can start thinking about them. And some people will send them right back to us. And some people send us rates before then. But our goal is to have them by August because we need to calculate our rates, we need to put them into our tariff, we need to put them into our system, and then send all of these rates out to the tour operators. And they want them by the end of September because what they're looking to do is build their itineraries for the next year. They want to put all their packages together, get their websites, itineraries together, their printed materials or brochures. And the bookings generally, so the lead time for an international booking, at least from Europe, is typically anywhere from 12 to 4 months. So I'm already booking a lot for 2019. And so if I don't have rates for places, it gets kind of tricky because then we're having to recommend something else to put a full itinerary together or cut a destination out as a whole, depending on how many hotels there are. So that is usually one of the toughest parts is when we want rates. The contracts typically go through April 1st through March 31st. And the reason behind that is April 1st through October 31st is their summer program, whereas November 1st through March 31st is their winter program. So they want to put both catalogs out as soon as possible at the same time, if possible. And so that's when the contracts usually flow through. So the commitment, this is always another issue. The volume doesn't happen overnight, especially with the international market. So one of the reasons they still book through the traditional channels is the consumer protection laws in Europe are very, very good. If a client is told that there is a pool at a hotel and they go there and there's a sign up that says pool closed for August for maintenance, they can go back and get an entire refund. And the consumer protection laws give them that possibility. So when a tour operator is looking to add something new, they're generally not going to add it to a itinerary, to their brochures, to their website, until they have gone themselves, checked it out, or sent 4 or 5 kind of test bookings to make sure that the property is what it's advertised as, to make sure it's the quality that they're looking for. So a lot of times when we add new hotels, activities, ranches, I tell people don't expect much, if any, volume for the first year. And even then, the first couple years are all going to be very slow because the tour operators, so if I add a hotel here in Snowmass for next year, most tour operators are going to use my 2018 tariff to design their itinerary. And that way, whenever we send them rates, they can go ahead and just pull those rates and plug it in, and they're almost ready to start printing. So it's basically, they're usually a year behind before they're even adding it to any material. But then there's that slow buildup of let's test it out. We don't want to send our top clients there until someone has checked it out. So I usually tell people to plan a contract for at least 3 years before you see much volume. I know it's a long commitment, but that's usually what the international market takes. And I mean, so it is a year contract, so you have the option every year to change your rates, to change allotment, to change whatever you want, deposit policies. But as a GM of a hotel, if you're going to even step into the market, that's what you need to, or director of sales or revenue manager. If you're going to step into a market, you need to think about it's not going to come right away. As I said, there's no better marketing than attending a trade show and marketing yourself. Because a lot of times I've noticed, we're guilty of it. If we work with a director of sales and he moves to another hotel and then sets up a contract with us, we know how he works. We know he's going to get us confirmations the day we send him. So a lot of times we'll follow him. And tour operators do the same. They say, hey, I know this person. I've worked with them for years at this hotel. They're now at this hotel, or it could be a whole new destination. Say, okay, well, yeah, I'd be happy to give your product a shot. So getting out there and meeting people and representing your product and yourself is very important. And then you guys will like this one. Committing by getting involved with the Colorado Tourism Office and your local DMO. So reach out and say, see if there's FAMs that you can host. If there's any way to get involved, go to IPW with CTO. Just things like that. Ask to get their leads and from trade shows to be a partner, and just try to be involved with them and show that you're making an effort. Because generally the first thing that comes to mind are the people we work with. So if we're at a show and I'm like, oh, I've been working with this new hotel, that's the one I'm going to be talking about. And then work together with local suppliers in other regions. And I know at the branding, you have Aspen Snowmass. The two cities work together. But Snowmass, winter destinations are very easy because there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of them, and a lot of them aren't great. So the ones that do really well are very busy all winter. But summer is a whole nother category because people are not here because of the mountains. There's mountains everywhere. They're coming here because of the Yellowstones, the Mesa Verde, the ruins. They're coming here because of arches, canyonlands. There's all these main national parks that are bringing people in. So working with those destinations and saying, hey, we'd be a great place for clients to stop between Denver and Arches, Canyonlands, and just partnering together a lot. Because international clients don't see boundaries. There's no state lines. They don't care about cities' rivalries. They don't care about states' rivalries. They want to see the main attractions along the way. So if you have something like the Maroon Bells, it's good to say, hey, people stop here on your way to your next destination or before you fly out to Denver if you're coming the other way. But I feel like a lot of people, a lot of DMOs and a lot of hoteliers view everyone in their region as competition, which they are, but everyone has the same goal, to bring people here. And then the more people come here, the more other tour operators offer the product, the more people talk about their trip to Snowmass, to Aspen, and then it just keeps attracting more people. So it's very beneficial to work with the people around you for the greater good, which I know is challenging, but I work with a lot of small receptive tour operators to keep kind of the focus on small receptive tour operators and the specialty, and keep people away from buying from Expedia because they can sell for a lot cheaper than I can usually. So I do work with a lot of my competition to try to achieve the same goals. But at the end of the day, we are competitors, and I do like to give them a lot of crap. I think that's all I have. Any questions, anything?
Thank you.
Very quiet bunch.
All right, and I'm actually, if everybody wants to stand for just a minute, we're going to skip over this next section because I want to get to FAMs. Because I know, well, if you guys don't have internet, I can actually have you all afternoon. those of you who can stay, we can, a little
Just
bit more.
outside the store and to the left is the back
I think it might be North American House that sent me an email about 2019 summer rates.
Okay.
So, yeah. Dan doesn't have the same feeling, but I'm like,
Oh, yeah, sorry, we moved it over
That's okay,
there.
making sure I had the right one.
the promotions that we had until October 30th or 30th. So we need to sit down and think about
Coffee, water.
those for the rest of the winter.
All right.
See what we want to do.
So since I think we didn't have too many people leave the room, and again, I don't think you have all day. For those of you who can stay after, I can show you some of the other research we have. Oops, sorry. But how to get involved with the CTO International, and one of the things that we do want to, as an office, talk about is involvement in our familiarization tours. The most simple, easiest way, once people see it, once they see your resort, hotel, accommodation, once they see your destination, there's nothing that speaks to selling Colorado as much as actually seeing it in person. So I will let Bree talk about that.
Awesome. So how many of you have hosted a fam tour with us? Great. Thank you. That's huge. Just as Andrea said, it is just the best way when they come here and see it, they smell it, they feel it, they can experience it. It's the best way for them to then go back and sell it in their country. So the best you can work with your chamber, your DMO to host these FAMs. I know sometimes it's hard to give up rooms or give a good rate during a busy time. We try our best to bring them in on shoulder seasons, but they are just becoming more popular. We are hosting a lot of FAMs, and they are increasing. We just hosted IPW, and they're coming even more now. So when we ask you guys, we just want to say thank you for hosting them. And if you guys have questions, we have representatives all over that can answer specific questions that you guys might have about the FAMs that are coming in. We do our best to give you all the information up front. I have a lot of forms that are passed on to you guys, and I know it's a little overwhelming when you look at all the information, but it really is good stuff, and it can help answer a lot of questions right off the bat. So that's the importance of them. Media FAMs, we talked a lot about trade. Media FAMs, we also host those, and they're very important. They are coming here and wanting to experience. They're looking for story angles, and a lot of them sometimes enjoy the free times because they're trying to come up with the story a little bit different than the next journalist or the other person that is on that trip with them. So we do both group FAMs and individuals. I would say individuals are a little bit harder to plan because they're here to experience something very specific. So they've done a lot of research and they know exactly what they want to see. For instance, we have a cycle and biking German individual guy who's coming in. He came in today to Montrose. He is biking from Montrose all the way to Glenwood Springs. And he knew exactly where he wanted to stop. He knew exactly how far he could bike. And he just reached out to us to say, hey, can you help me with accommodation and a few meals here and there? But it's very, very specific on what he is wanting to see, where he wants to hike. We also do, group media trips where we're putting together where they're going. And we'll get a little bit more into how we decide where they're going a little bit later. Trade FAM, so again, don't think we have to talk more about why they are important. But yeah, they're coming. They're also wanting to experience, but they're really wanting to do more property tours and seeing the property, because if they're selling you, they want to be able to know more about it. We had a group in a French Norwegian air group in 2 weeks ago, and a lot of them have been selling Colorado, but they hadn't been here before. And they were selling hotels, but they hadn't seen them before. So we really made sure we went to those hotels that they are selling so that they could just do a better job selling it overseas or when they're back in their country. I think all of this is, we've touched all of them.
Great, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
You guys do a fabulous job with FAMs, and thank you for putting them on. We participate in as many as we can. We always get the clips from the media who come, and you guys do a great job sharing that. On the trade FAMs, how do you report out, like, did they add a thing? I mean, how do you track that on the result side? I mean, I think the media, sometimes you get this much mentioned, sometimes you're the front page of this picture, and it's great, and you see that, and that could take a year, and I appreciate that. So how do you measure it?
Yeah, the trade side's always a little bit more interesting, and so every month we get a report from our representatives in country, and we've added some pages to it, and some of it is new product. And new product, at the very end of it, we've added some columns, is this result of a FAM? I think we've had two just, I'm gonna say in the last couple of months, we had the French itinerary that was added because of a FAM, and another, and I think that was sent to the partners who hosted it.
Can't remember.
But yeah,
I'll have to
the
look it
trade
up.
actually has been a little bit more of our conundrum, because the PR is so easy to measure.
Yeah, it might take a while, but it's usually like there, and you say, oh, okay.
Well, and again, when we're talking about timelines, the trade can take up to 2 years before we
Right,
see it.
absolutely, yeah.
And because, we weren't here more than 2 years ago,
Sure.
it's also trying to figure that. So that is one of the questions that's on our plate right now that we're trying to better track. So our representatives are doing a better job at telling us what new product has been added. This time of year gets really busy, because this is when they're doing their catalogs, and this is when a lot of stuff starts getting added. So we're actually trying to find a really good way to report it, and it's a little more difficult. Like I said, I know that one French one came through, and I feel like another one did, that were clear examples of, they went on a FAM, and now there's products in the market. But it's not always that cut and dry.
And then the question is really like, the next question, how does it sell? And one of my questions, and it might be more to Chris, I don't want to.
No, you're fine. Go. This is what we wanted.
About how, if you're a property, or if you're a DMO where our properties have contracted with you, what can we do to help sell that itinerary? Is there anything that we can do to help sell that itinerary? I know Mars always asking for images that we can share with zero rights and copyright in perpetuity. They can put it on a billboard and nobody's going to sue them. What are the things that a property can affect, or the DMO can affect, to help either be top of your mind when you go over there, or with the end user who you contract with, to say, sell us. Bills are better than any national park. Come on.
I would say the picture is a huge one. You'd be amazed how hard it is to get pictures from destinations and hotels. Like I said, going out and doing some of the marketing on your own, so that people are out there and kind of in people's face, kind of reminding them constantly that hey, we're there, is huge for the tour operator side. Because, they go to a show and they're bombarded with so many destinations, and they all have something amazing to offer. Well, except for Missouri, and I can say that because I'm from Missouri. So they all have something amazing to offer, and they're all competing for the tour operators to offer their product. But if you're not there year after year and consistent, and that is one of the big things that I run into, is consistency with contracts. I'll give someone a contract for a year or 2 years, and we do just a handful of room nights, so then they drop off. And then a tour operator comes back to me and says, hey, what happened to this hotel? I just added them last year. So, well, they're not issuing a contract to us this year. And they say, okay, well,
Start over.
who should I replace them with? And then that hotel comes back next year and says, hey, we were slightly down, let's give this another shot. I'm like, well, now we're starting back at square one. And so the consistency for hoteliers to contract, and for the DMOs to be at the shows representing their area, is very, very important.
And if I could say too, because we get this question a lot, even at the trade shows, and, I know this is what our DMO partners who are with us, they're always looking for the new and the different. What is different about this property? What is its unique selling point? What is, just, if you have a brand new pool and spa area, huge. Make sure your DMO knows that so they can represent you. If it's, you have a new activity that you're doing, even if your hotel now rents bikes, do you know what? That's a big deal. I mean, that actually goes somewhere. So it can be really simple things, but that's really, they want to know what's new and what's different, and if they put it in their itinerary, how is that going to stand out from the tour operator that we meet with next, and what makes that different? So any little piece of information you can give us can go a long way.
The activities are huge for us. That has been one area we've seen a lot of growth amongst all the tour operators, is adding activities into their itineraries, because they are competing with the OTAs. And so they're like, how can we make this a full experience? We're not just booking them a room and their flight and their car rental, but now they're doing, this tour, they're doing this rafting, they're doing a native experience. So they want to be able to build them a whole package, and it just attracts the people to book that package more, instead of just being the traditional this hotel, this hotel, this hotel. You can see this long list of things in between, because there is so much to see. You're going to see this, you're going to do this. So we're going to build the whole thing for you.
In those packages, are you wanting all of those elements to be at your OTA rate? I mean, at your...
Yeah, so most of the activities, most activities and hotels will give a good discounted rate. Usually where we run into trouble is like private guides, or ranches that just don't do as high a markup. But yeah, just because we're then offering it back. A lot of the activities I do have a lower markup on as well, because a lot of times it's not as high a price point.
It would seem that for destinations like Snowmass and Aspen, that we have so many free things that we offer here, whether it's free s'mores in the winter or the free rafta service, or you'd think that how appealing are those for you to add where it doesn't really cost, there's no transaction, but I would imagine that the more activities you add, the price is just going up.
Yeah.
And so there's a balance between having everything, champagne on arrival every day. You're going to wind up paying for that somehow. And I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to package all the things that people can take advantage of for either very low cost or free in this area, so that it seems like more's included. I mean, I don't want to...
Yeah, so what I tell, and we're trying to get more of a library for it, but for like very inexpensive museums or events that are...
Yeah, I mean, there's so many low-priced...
events that are
free. There's so many high-priced things here, too. Let me balance that out. But just from a not adding the rate, keep adding rate, a day of whitewater rafting, even at a good rate, is probably $80 a person. I mean, there's no way to skin that cat differently. So if you say, oh, there's a free concert, or there's, these other things that might be...
Things like concerts, concerts and festivals are really hard, because the international really don't. They're not traveling because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, not even, really not even Sturgis is a huge draw. Cheyenne Frontier Days is next to nothing.
No.
But what we do for some of the smaller, cheaper stuff or free stuff is we'll have like digital coupons or a digital page brochure about whether it's a free museum or just something like that. And then we'll send it to the tour operators so they can put it in their itineraries. And the more they have for areas, the more inclined they're going to be to send people there, because they can have a much higher add-on value. But it's pretty hard because there's so many things like that across the entire U.S. So for them to say, okay, well, there's this rodeo or this balloon festival or this going on, it's just hard for them to keep track of it.
So on the CTO side, we're also, those are in all of our pages that we're moving people to. We also will do as you probably know, our domestic team does their things to do for each and every season. And we list all of those things. So we're sending that out through different means, maybe not that they're contracting that way, but, we're also trying to let the public know that all of these things are out there. Not the transportation as much. We don't have RAFTA in there, or the Vail Shuttle, or Summit County Stage, or, we don't have that kind of stuff in there. But often, if it's on a hotel site, they're gonna, before they book a hotel, they're probably gonna come look at your website, and, that kind of information's on there. That's helpful too.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. No, it's good. It's all good stuff.
Hey, our time is your time. As
Yeah,
long as
this
you
is
guys can
great.
stay, we'll keep talking.
Yeah. Yeah, so hosting these trade FAMs and building a relationship with them, as Chris said, is huge. And if you're getting them in your hotel to stay with you, that's the first step. And then, we give you their contact information. You can follow up with media kits and information for them. And we are always here too if you have questions after a FAM trip. Utilize us, ask us questions, ask Mar questions. Just make sure you guys are just staying connected and involved, and we'll do our best to push that information out. Yes.
Recognizing that y'all are doing so many of these FAMs, which is fantastic, and you have an entire state to deal with, is there a way that we could maybe have a blackout calendar or something? Because often we want to host people, but you come to us saying, not you necessarily, but somebody, maybe it's Jennifer, or maybe
It's normally me. It's okay. It's
right.
normally me.
Here's the itinerary, and they're coming to you on Saturday,
Yep.
June 17th,
Yep.
Food and Wine Weekend, and we're at 97% occupancy.
Yeah.
And the problem is it happens over and over again, and it puts us, if we're the DMO and we're going out to properties, I think it makes them say, what's wrong with you? Don't you know it's Food and Wine Weekend, or it's a weekend in July? And I know everybody is busier on weekends, obviously, but there are certain weekends where there's just no way. And I would say almost all of our fams seem to come in the weekend. So.
Yeah. And I
anyway,
think that's the
and
hardest.
it's not that they're here only for a weekend,
Right.
They're here for 8 days.
Right.
And we get them. And yeah, in the case of Snowmass, you don't want people before or after a certain date, right? Because you want
In May.
Lost
or-
Forest
Not in
open,
May.
or the Gondola, yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas we're happy probably to have somebody Memorial Day weekend. So I don't know if it could be a color-coded thing.
I would say kind of as a rule, there's some rules that we follow. I mean, we really try not to do July and August FAMs. That's something we, for the life of us, tried to stay away from. But again, some of the PR, some of these journalists come in and they've got this very specific angle, and we try to show them as much as we can. So we'll ask.
Right.
You can always say no.
Well, I guess, I think my point is, can you ask before the itinerary is done so that we can then give some input? Because if the itinerary is done, then it's like you either take them, and when a lot of times you do want them, we appreciate it. We love hosting it, but it's kind of like a little bit more give and take. And maybe because you have so many, I know that's probably hard. So I just wondered if there's some sort of
Well, and sometimes,
system.
like I said, we have some of the unique ones, like this bike rider who's coming through, who knew exactly where he wanted to be on certain nights. So
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah,
we
but
have more choice than others, but there is always back and forth. And
You know,
if you can't do it,
I
you
would
can't
almost
do it.
tag on to that, like if we could get a calendar and, for my hotel, thank the Lord the German fan wanted to come the exact day they did, because that is the one day I have rooms.
right.
And
we
that's,
totally
and
planned
this, well, I mean, truly, because I am sold out from yesterday for the next 10 days, except I had a few rooms left on that one day, and I'm like, oh, thank God it's that one day, but
Yeah.
I would have hated to miss out on that,
Right.
But much like you said, I'd love to see it in advance, say, hey, if there's a way they can go,
Maybe
this
we could
town
all
first.
send you sort of a green, yellow, red calendar of, no way, we can't do these dates. We know that it's Food and Wine, or it's like we're town sold out. We're not gonna even ask.
Right.
And if we could send that to you in April or May,
Or even before that.
or,
as
when,
we plan.
like when we know, and then we could say, these are kind of go dates. We could take them. Yellow, maybe not. See how it lines up. Red, absolutely. We're for
Well,
some.
and what I will say is we will do our best to honor that. When it
Yeah.
comes to groups especially, individuals, we may have individual.
Oh, and
requests.
individuals
Yeah,
are so much
yeah,
easier.
yeah.
I
I mean, but
frankly, one
groups-
room is-
I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I'm thrilled to have them. We're really lucky, but I will say my team's probably gonna be a little bit tired, given that we've got 800 people up there right now. So, and then it goes into the next one, and then the next one. That's that one kind of day off. But yeah, just that'd be awesome.
We really, yeah, we will try to take everything you need into consideration.
Thanks.
And sometimes we're gonna ask, and if you can't do it, you can't. And we've been known, I mean, I know Bree works magic on rejiggering itineraries sometimes to get them to go the other way, or, anything we can do.
Yeah, so what I would say is I mean, that's the hardest part of my job, right? Is I'm working with the entire state so that everybody has their dates that they can't host a FAM. So yes, please give those to me and I will do my best to match that up. But when I'm, popping out 10 FAMs in a few weeks, sometimes I don't look at those dates. So I think the biggest thing for you guys to help me with that is if I send it out to you, that itinerary, when I send you the opportunity, yes, I would love that to be the final itinerary, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's set in stone. It hasn't gone back to the participants yet. It's really, this is my first try to get it out, and this is what I'm hoping for because it's the best, route for transportation for whatever reason. It is a huge puzzle. Every single FAM is a huge puzzle. So if the quicker you can get back to me and say, those dates are bad, we can't do those. What about this? I'm happy to do my best to rework that itinerary, and sometimes I can, other times I can't. But yeah, that is really one of the hardest parts of my job. So the more we're talking, and if you're getting back to me, I will absolutely do everything I can to make it work for you guys. So that's the biggest advice I would say. And I apologize ahead of time if I do reach out during those times. Sometimes I'm working on so many different itineraries that I can't keep them all straight unless I'm having you guys say yes, no, maybe, let me look into it. But yeah, again, we'll just work and do what we can because we don't want to miss out on bringing them here. And if it's like the FTI, I'm so glad they're here on that one day. And I wish I would have said I planned that, but it's hard, but we'll work together. Yeah. Awesome. So I'm just going to go through these very quickly. These are just tips for hosting large fam groups for lodging, pre-king hotel rooms if you can. I know some you can't do this, but if you can, that is a huge help, especially when we're bringing in a group of 10 people. It's nice to have their last name, a key. Mar, you do awesome with that in helping your hotels. I think, yeah, with the Westin. Or I don't know who does it, but thank you. Yes, whoever is doing it, thank you.
If it means turning off incidentals or whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Next point, yeah, turning off incidentals. You guys can do that. That's fine. It's all good.
I'll read.
For, not anybody here is restaurants, but pre-ordering appetizers and you actually did a wonderful job on this. We had a group here for a quick lunch. We had like an hour and 15 minutes for a meal and a site tour, and made a pre-menu. You printed it out nicely. They had 3 options to choose from. They ordered it. Everybody was, fed in 30 minutes, and we went around and looked at the property. So just stuff like that really does help a fam move. I can always, I know we did this on Sarah for the French fam, is she would send me the menus and I would get the meals from the participants, and it just made everything a lot quicker. So anything like that, we're happy to work with you guys just to make everything go smoother the day of. So alcohol, as a lot of you guys know, the CTO, we cannot purchase that, being government. So we rely heavily on you guys to help with that. So let's just make sure we're talking about it beforehand. It is okay to ask participants to cover this if you guys can't. We just let them know ahead of time. We like to tell them, tonight dinner's on us, but if you want libations, it's on your own. And that's absolutely okay. There's no problem with that. If there's any waivers, we can fill those out beforehand. Some people I know activities like us to fill that out when we get there, but if you want us to do that beforehand, we absolutely can. Another good idea is just to bring in locals. wherever you can, those that speak the language. People are always very intrigued if we have a French famine and there's a French guy who moved and is now living in Snowmass. They love that. They love to talk about it and hear about it and tell stories. So feel free to include those cultural ties in any relationships you have. So budget for group FAMs. The CTO, we typically cover the air travel and the ground transportation, which is a huge portion of a FAM trip. And that's why it's just such a great opportunity for you guys to hop in on these, is because we're paying for those that huge amount of transportation there. We rely heavily on destinations and our CVBs to cover hotel rooms, meals, activities. I know sometimes everybody has a budget, so we understand that. So let's just talk and see what we can do to make it work. That's what I try to do, is I try and be flexible and the best I can and work with you guys, because I know everybody's on a budget. We all live by that. So individual FAMs, it's the same, but not all meals have to be covered for individuals. A lot of the times they're traveling on their own and have a specific thing they want to see, so we'd normally just say, hey, on your own, but here's a few suggestions, and that normally goes over pretty well. How we decide on location. So kind of what happens is our in-market representation reps, they provide us a wish list based on who their audience is, and they send that to me. I have a whole form that I have them fill out. Sometimes the participant themselves fills that out, where they say, this is required. We really need to see the Maroon Bells, or we really need to see the Westin because they, sell you and haven't seen it yet. That stuff will be laid out on the forms that I'm sending to you guys. The journalist requests it, and we always want to make sure it's a good fit. I don't like to bring in a fan that's not a good fit for you guys, and vice versa. It's just doesn't go over well. So I send something to Mara. I mean, there is times she's like, this is just not where we're at right now. Would love to do it. And we talk. We say, okay, is there something else that you're interested in? Sometimes some people can't host a certain country for whatever reason. And again, flexibility, let's talk about it. Just make sure you're upfront with us beforehand, because the worst part is when they're here and there's a problem. If we can fix it beforehand, we try to. So let us know. If we know about that stuff beforehand, we can definitely tweak things. And then from there, I send the proposed itinerary to the industry partners. Again, it's a proposed itinerary. It's not final, so just let me know if we need to tweak stuff. So this is from a destination perspective. Katie Schneider actually put this together in Fort Collins. If you guys know her, I love her. She's hilarious. But this is what she says is the 10 most important things when hosting a FAM. So she says, only host a FAM tour that is right for your community. Do my best to ask questions to determine theme and goals of the trip. Make sure the itinerary only includes activities and experiences that the average tourist is able to do, especially for the media. Invite stakeholders to a meal if you're not able to experience their activity or attraction. Always carry your cell phone and have your cell phone on the itinerary so we know who to
contact. If we're headed somewhere and we're sending a text and we're not hearing back, we're starting to get nervous.
Yeah. And in the mountains, it's hard. Call attractions, restaurants, and hosts ahead of time to confirm that you are coming. That's a big one. Have a plan B because of weather. We all know that. Provide at least an hour of free time. I know sometimes this is hard, especially they're here very fast, and we understand that. Again, just know they're professionals. This is their job. A lot of destinations push back at me and say we can't host it unless there's 2 days. Believe me, I would love to give you 2 days, and I would love to give Aspen 2 days and Snowmass 2 days. I would love to give everybody 2 days, but that's just not the reality of the industry. So just work with what you got, and it does go a long way. Keep them apprised of what's next. Assume they know very little about the destination. they're going to ask questions that are on the itinerary all the time. That's my biggest pet peeve, but I just have to remember they're here to experience, and they don't necessarily know what's coming next, even though they've been sent the itinerary.
But it's like reading a user manual.
Absolutely.
Until you actually use it or see it,
I
then
really
you
like
understand.
that diagram or sketch that you put together about how to dress for Colorado. You know, that it's really clever. It's really well done. I thought it was great. But I feel like with some of the international fans, I'm going to say, especially in winter, and they have zero idea of what to expect in terms of what they're supposed to wear or.
It's all been sent to them.
Right.
That's the
but,
problem.
You know, it's.
Do what we can.
Yeah,
But
so
that
I
they-
think that diagram, which I think is new, I mean, I feel like I just saw it, do you know which one I'm talking about? It's got like the
Color
summer
ready.
and winter.
Color ready stuff?
Hmm?
The color ready?
Yeah, I thought that was really clever.
Yeah.
But because I feel like so often we'll get, you know, some of the Mexicans who've never seen snow and are gonna wear jeans to ski tomorrow, and it's just that kind of stuff, and then we're at dinner, and I'm always at
That's
dinner
all we
with the
can say to
Mexicans
that.
because I speak Spanish. But, you know, I feel like I'm at dinner and I'm like, oh, yeah, no, not jeans tomorrow. And it's 9 o'clock at night and I'm trying to figure out how to help them for their 8:30 meeting time with,
Yep,
yeah,
that's all I can say. Yeah, we prep them as best we can.
yeah.
Yeah. In multiple ways.
Yeah.
We tell them. And I think that's one of the hardest parts
Yeah.
is we can give all the information if they're not reading it and actually preparing. It's like, well, I guess the other best thing we can do is right when they get to destination is talk about it then, and say, hey, I know you guys are going skiing tomorrow. Here's another refresher what to wear. And there's
book.
yeah.
Don't wear this, wear this.
Yes, yeah. But again, feel free to remind me beforehand, and I will send out another reminder. We'll do whatever we can.
We don't, for example, do a lot of ski fams, but we've even talked about it on our team. Do we have like a winter box, with all of our old skis?
Take this
the
with you.
throwaway gloves and the whatever. And, hey,
Yeah.
here's a box that we put on a bus, and
Yeah.
if people don't have something, maybe, hopefully, something will fit.
Yeah.
We've talked about that.
Yes, we have.
So
And-
then we lost our storage
We
space.
took I think Sarah, you and I did it last year. We took somebody hiking from the top of the Elk Camp Trail down, and she had gone to buy a can of oxygen, like one of those that they sell at the drugstore for the hike. And it was like, yeah, I don't think you're gonna need. And bear spray, that was the two things she bought.
And bear spray. And last point is flexibility is king. Number one. There's always going to be something goes wrong, something changes. So the more you guys can be flexible with us, we'll figure it out. There's always a solution. Might not be the first choice, but there's always a solution.
On the trip,
Last, how to get involved. Get connected with your DMO, with Mar and Sarah. They're fantastic, both Sarahs. Yeah, that's number one. Sign up for CTO efforts, CTO co-ops, social media, domestic visiting journalists, international FAMs, international sales missions, trade shows. Again, there is so much that we do. If you guys have questions after this, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions and to get you guys involved. If we don't know about it, we can't help you guys. So communicate with us, let us know what's new, and we'll push it out to every channel we can. Ask questions, and here's our contact information. So we'll send out this presentation to Mar and to Sarah, and we'll make sure that it gets out to everybody. And those that couldn't make it, because I know there was quite a few that couldn't make it. But thanks for your time. Is this it? I think it is. Yeah. Thanks for your time and for being here. I know it was a long presentation, but we appreciate it, and we hope it was beneficial to you guys. Again, please just utilize us, and that this is our job, and we want to help you guys and do anything we can to help you guys succeed as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys, thank you so much. You guys do so much on behalf of the whole state and our destination specifically. So we really, really appreciate it. You're great partners, and we appreciate that you've all taken the time to come here today and share your expertise with us. So.
Well, it's easy easy for us to be great partners with you because you're great partners in
Yeah.
return. So we very, very much appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that you're appreciating it.
Oh,
Just
love
kick the
that.
walls
We
for
should
a
all just
while.
hug.
Let's hug it out.
Thank you so much, you guys. We really
I mean, we're here,
appreciate it.
we're not in a rush, so if you have any questions for us.
Do we do a lot of domestic, yeah.
Most
But
people just
should we
say
say
no.
CTO?
Most people just
You
say
know,
no.
we, yeah, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is information, some of it's visits, but I work really closely, we work closely with Carly. Yeah, in fact, I worked with her last week on, a journalist that I know and met with, but she went to her, like, for one-stop shopping, and she's coming. I did last week and design, from doing a client.
Clearly it did, but believe me, I will try.
The inquiry